There was a Rasmussen poll came out just yesterday where 71% of Americans said flat out they are angry with the federal government. At some point, it almost feels like a confrontation has become inevitable. I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of violence. I've been hoping the federal government would collapse the way the USSR did. But it almost seems like our government is going to keep on abusing the people until somebody fights back. Maybe that's what they want, because then they can bring in the armies of the United Nations and reconquer the American continent for the New World Order.
And by the way, people 10, 12, 13, 14 years ago, when we would read UN documents, West Point training manuals, Colonel Craig Roberts can talk about his nephew being trained. They had Wesley Clark there, and he said, you will serve the UN. We may use UN troops in America to quell the American people. Now that's in the Northcom documents. They had NLE 09 with FEMA a few months ago, FEMA.gov, saying troops from 14 foreign nations are training to take on the American people. And folks couldn't believe that, just like they couldn't believe the Copenhagen Treaty was world government. Now the UN says it's world government. I mean, people have got to face the facts. We are being conquered right now by a group of illegitimate crooks.
It's absolutely right, and you need to understand something about the global government. I mean, I'm opposed to the concept completely for reasons I've already gone into. But if you have a government that is coming into being by way of deception and lie and fraud, then this will be a government that can never be honest with its population, can never allow dissent, can never allow examination. They're already talking about making climate denial on a crime on the par with Holocaust denial. It is going to be an absolute tyranny, because they will not be able to allow any freedom whatsoever, or the first thing that's going to happen is the people are going to say, wait a minute, why are we listening to you if it's all a lie?
So, again, how does this come to a head? How do you see this ending?
I see it ending with enough people getting angry around the world to start kicking on the doors of the legislature and the ruling palaces and say, look, we're not going to go for this anymore. You can sign all the Copenhagen treaties you want. We're not going to go along with it. It's like Gandhi did in India, non-cooperation. You can pass all the laws you want. You can print up all the little fancy pieces of paper that say you have a right to my money and my property. But if I don't go along with it, if I refuse to believe it, if I no longer am enslaved by these beliefs that you are trying to put in me, then it's not going to work. You can run around with your fancy papers and stuff. There are 300 million Americans out here. They're buying up guns and ammo. And if it comes down to a question of absolute force, the federal government is going to lose. And I know they've got the portable torture machines, those pain ray guns and tasers and all this other stuff they're buying with our money, I might add. But the bottom line is they can target a few small dissenters and put them through a great deal of grief. But if the American people, all 300 million, got angry at the same time, this federal government would be gone 24 hours later.
And they know that. And it took 5%, 3 to 5, depending on which historic numbers you look at, to defeat the British. We have way more than 5%. I mean, as you said, over 50% are ready for revolution. The left-right paradigm, where they play the left and right off against each other so the people never actually deal with the actual power structure, that's wearing thin. So they're coming off the rails. They're stuck in the mud. Their whole juggernaut is grinding to a halt right now. And I just hope listeners realize we are in one of the greatest times that we've ever seen. We are going into a time when the future of humanity is going to be basically charted, and every email, every phone call, every letter written to the editor, every speech you give at church, every video you give your coworkers, every person you send a prisonplanet.com or Infowars.com or whatreallyhappened.com news article to, is one more person we begin to wake up, because people are now ready to hear the truth when they weren't ready to hear it in the past. We've been proven right about everything we talked about. We're only going off the globalist own playbook, their own reports, their own white papers. Something this big can't be hidden. People say, well, if this was happening, there'd be leaks. We'd have whistleblowers. We'd have documents. We do. That's the whole point here. And, I can rant and rave about this all day. It's just so mind-blowing to now be alive in this time. Let's go to callers on ClimateGate. Carrie in Kansas, you're on the air.
Hey, guys, as you know, this is not only a horrible affront against sovereignty, this is a money-making scheme for the United Nations. as part of the clean development mechanism that's in the Kyoto Protocol. There's what's called the share of proceeds. The United Nations is literally collecting money off of all of these emissions credits that they're creating through the clean development mechanism. And they suspect that they're going to have almost 3 billion emissions credits created by 2012. Right now, those credits, the CERs, the Certified Emission Reductions credits, are going on Sandor's European Climate Exchange, which is the European copy of the Chicago Climate Exchange that you were discussing earlier. Richard Sandor owns both of those companies through Climate Exchange PLC. These CERs are going on the European market right now for $21. It's like 13.5 euros. Barack Obama, during the campaign, he said that he thought that a reasonable price for carbon by the ton was $40. That's twice what it is in Europe, which is the mandatory market. The price for these same instruments in the United States on the CCX, where it's still voluntary, right now is like 75 cents. So there's a total push by the money-making organizations on the planet, specifically the United Nations and especially the World Bank, all of the other banks that are affiliated with these gangsters and criminals, because they're making money off of it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's why Newt Gingrich is for it. That's why all the big banks are for it. That's why all the big oil companies are pushing it. That's why this is all happening. And a lot of the public really thinks the Earth's dying and polar bears are drowning. They believe polar bears can't swim. Just the simplistic fraud is so over the top. And the carbon taxes and carbon credits is only a small piece of all this. They're going to tax beef and poultry and fish and television sets and your dog. California's already doing it with the TV sets. This is being announced. This is literally thousands of taxes. Mike Rivero.
Absolutely, and it's more than just the taxes. We have an article at whatreallyhappened.com today where basically it's going down the list of the world's richest people and how much of their personal fortunes they've invested in these new so-called green industries. They're all lining up to invest in these brand new companies because one of the effects of this global warming hoax is to encourage people to stop buying old products that are now declared to be dangerous to Earth and to start buying these new products. Well, the new products are all owned by these very rich people who are getting on board the green revolution. And it's not about saving the earth. It is simply about stealing market share away from existing companies through the use of this propaganda and trick. As I said, there's trillions of dollars on the line here. And this is why they're not going to walk away from this hoax without a fight.
Well said. I'll tell you, Kerry, you were extremely informed. I wish more people knew what you knew. What are you doing in your area to wake up folks that have no idea? They're told, hey, green cars, electric cars, windmills, sounds great. But that's the sugar coating of this global government. The globalists have nothing to do with that. They could care less about all that. That's just a facade they put up. So when people hear, oh, the UN wants me to have an electric car, isn't that good? It has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, we know that for a fact. I posted up an article on the Prison Planet Forum called the Kyoto Protocol, Oppressing People, Enriching Banks. What you're talking about with these electric cars, what the United Nations is doing right now in third world countries in the name of quote-unquote saving the environment is funding these clean development mechanisms. So instead of from our perspective, we say, oh, well, coal is dirty and we need to save the environment, we need to put windmills up. Well, that's fine. But when you live in China and the UN comes in with funding from the World Bank and says, we're going to build a hydroelectric dam here because it's clean. And by the way, all you 1 million people who live here, yeah, just leave. The clean development
Well, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It allows the UN to selectively give the contracts and the money to select corporations that fund the United Nations. So it's a takeover of the global economy by a select group of corporations. Thank you, Kerry. Great points. Rusty in Texas. Rusty, you're on the air.
Hi, Alex. Last night I received a recorded message from Randy Naugabauer, our congressman here in West Texas, and he was talking about the carbon tax, the carbon credits and everything. And he said in the recorded message that it would raise everybody's energy bills per family $3,400 a year.
Yeah, no, the United Nations and the Democrats admit that. That is a very low estimate. That The plan will double the price of coal-powered electricity. So 51% of our electricity comes from that. And even if don't have a coal plant in your area, the energy's all pooled and shared in most areas. So most of the electricity we get has coal generated power in it. And that alone will devastate the economy. And this is just the beginning. I mean, it's like they promised the health care plan wouldn't have penalties for not having insurance. It's got $5,000 penalties. It's got $250,000 fines, 5 years in prison. It takes 2.5 to 5% out of your check. I mean, look, these big banks want profit centers, and they use government to come in with excuses, healthcare, the environment, whatever it is to loot us, just like the banker bailout was to unfreeze mortgages. The day after they passed it, October 3rd, they said, we're not going to spend it on mortgages, and we're not going to tell you where the money's going.